Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 22 of Outside the Letterbox. I'm Paul Duda, and joining me is Joseph Campbell.
Addy.
Nick Van Lieshout is stepping out for this one. He didn't really want to see Dracula Untold, so he just sort of said no. He didn't have time to see it, and he didn't want to see it, so it was a couple factors. But anyway, as I just mentioned, we're going to be talking about Dracula Untold today. And first, we're going to talk about some movies that we've watched recently. We're going to skip over film news for the week and just get straight to our review of Dracula Untold. But first, you can find more episodes of Outside Letterbox on our website, the-letterbox.com, as well as on iTunes by just searching for Outside the Letterbox. Leave us a review on iTunes or comment on our site. Let's just get right into it, Joe. What have you watched recently?
Alrighty, well, I saw a couple movies this week. One of them I watched, which surprisingly I haven't seen before, was Team America: World Police. I know all the references to the movie. I know all the jokes. I just hadn't gotten around to seeing the movie yet. Not really a whole lot to say there. I mean, like it's funny. It's the guys who did South Park. It feels like the guys who did South Park. I'm not a huge fan of their crass humor, but I really love when they actually get really, really clever, which they can be. And a lot of the humor for me in this one came out of the fact that everyone was played by marionettes, with the puppets and just kind of like the way they walked, when they're trying to be serious and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I had a lot of fun in it. I do think they go overboard. Again, that's kind of how I feel about South Park as well. But when it's good, it's really good. So I enjoy it. It's funny.
Yeah, I saw that years ago, and I just remember, like, I like South Park all right, but I'm in the same boat with you. Like, when it's crass, it seems like really stupid, and then when it's clever, it's like incredibly clever. So it makes the crass parts sort of frustrating.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like one of the only filmmakers that I've seen recently that can make crass humor really clever is Phil Lord and Chris Miller with the 21 Jump Street. I felt like in that one, especially, I mean, like even when they're being really crass, they still know how to pull it off funny instead of just crass,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Whereas,
there's something clever about the crassness.
Exactly. Whereas in South Park, I just feel like a lot of times, like his talk at the end of the movie in front of all the actors, it's kind of funny at first, but it's kind of like all the humor is based on the fact that he's just saying dirty things, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So another movie that I saw this week, though, was a newer one. This is one I've been looking forward to for a while. Was Annabelle. Now, this is the prequel to The Conjuring. It's kind of a prequel spin-off because it's all about the Annabelle doll that was in The Conjuring. It's kind of the first 5 minutes of The Conjuring. They're talking about her story, and then this movie just kind of expounds upon that. In fact, it's really funny. The opening shot to Annabelle's is the same opening shot to The Conjuring, and they kind of replay part of that opening scene in there.
Really?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's kind of like they don't show you the entire scene, but they show you the part where they're like, oh yeah, we found this doll here, and this little girl's speaking through it, and I don't know where it came from. And then it cuts to like a year earlier or 10 years before, I forget how long it was, and shows like Annabelle's story and how she became this demonic doll, that kind of stuff. So it's not, I mean, it's not as good as The Conjuring, but that's kind of, to me, it's kind of difficult to match The Conjuring. The Conjuring for me is just flat out one of my favorite modern day horror movies. Like besides just being a really good horror movie, a really good scary movie, I think it's just a genuinely good movie, and it shows something that you don't see a whole lot in horror movies, is that it's kind of an overwhelming presence of goodness and hope, and kind of like where there's darkness, there's light, and that kind of stuff. And I feel like a lot of horror movies just like focusing on kind of the evil stuff without focusing on the good guys. So I felt like The Conjuring did that really well. Annabelle is basically every other supernatural haunted house movie that you see these days. It falls into the same format as Insidious kind of laid out, in that the people moving in, people are in the house, something comes in, brings in a supernatural entity, there's creepy people walking around, and then and then they try to move out and that kind of stuff. So basically, it's the exact same movie that we've seen being made a lot today, but it does it really well. So it's kind of like it's a format that is not surprising, but they know how to pull it off in this one. So I enjoyed it. I think it was great, but I had fun with it.
Was it scary?
A little bit. They had a couple moments. You probably find it a lot scarier than I did. I mean, there were a couple really good jump scares. I personally found, honestly, Delivers from Evil a little scarier. That's just because it's this one again, it's stuff that I've seen before, so I knew what was coming up, and it's kind of a lot of the stuff is where they're leading up to a jump scare, you're kind of cringing in your seat, and the jump scare happens. You're like, oh, okay, there it was. So it's a little scary. It's not that scary, but it does its job.
Nice. Huh. Well, I was intrigued by it. Obviously, I enjoyed The Conjuring. I think I would agree with you that I actually think it's a better movie than it is a horror movie.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's very scary, but I do think it's a well-made movie. But I was definitely interested in Annabelle after seeing that first trailer that was released, and then it's getting sort of shot down by all the critics. So I don't know. Since you liked it, I might check it out now. I wasn't planning on seeing it in theaters, but I wasn't planning on seeing it in theaters until after. I'm confusing myself. After the trailer, I wanted to see it in theaters, but then when I started hearing what people thought about it, I wasn't so sure. But maybe I'll check it out now.
Yeah, it's fun. It's okay. I liked it.
Okay. Was that it for you?
That's all I got. I didn't see a whole lot this week.
Okay. Well, I saw at the beginning of this week. I saw Sean Levy's. This Is Where I Leave You. And for those who are not familiar with Sean Levy, he is he's a director famous for movies like Night at the Museum, Date Night, and Cheaper by the Dozen 2. I don't know if he did Cheaper by the Dozen 1. Oh no, he did. Sorry,
the bottom of the barrel there, Paul.
He's got a very interesting track record. He also did Real Steel though, which I don't. What's that?
That's interesting. That's a really good movie.
Yes. See, that's what's weird to me is that he's got these sort of crappy campy comedies in there. He did the Pink Panther too, and then he's got Real Steel, which doesn't fit into any of the other movies he's done, and people love Real Steel. So it's funny to me that he keeps going back to these other things. I guess Night at the Museum makes a ton of money, so he's done all of those, and he's doing the last one too. Anyway, so he directed this movie, This Is Where I Leave You, which is got this awesome cast. If nothing else, the movie has an amazing cast. Let's see, Tina Fey, Adam Driver. Who else is in this movie? Michael Bateman. Jason Bateman. Jane Fonda. Rose Byrne. Corey Stoll from House of Cards. There's Connie Britton from Friday Night Lights. This is a great cast of really great actors and actresses. And unfortunately, the movie just sucks.
What a build-up.
Yeah, seriously. I was excited to see it because I think that cast is awesome. I'm a huge fan of Tina Fey. Jason Bateman's all right, and Adam Driver is famous for for starring in the TV show Girls, which I've only seen one episode of, and I was impressed by him, but I wasn't really impressed by anything else. And he was in I think he was in Inside Llewyn Davis. He was the tall cowboy with the deep voice in Inside Llewyn Davis.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He does the funny voice while they were recording that track. So he's a great actor from what I've seen, and he's in the new Star Wars movie. Um, so I was really excited to see this. Unfortunately, it sucked. Like the movie's just a mess. Most of the jokes I felt like fell really flat. There's a couple funny parts, and then the ending of the movie, you're just like, there's this like crazy reveal, and you're just like, what? Like the whole thing's about how life is sort of a mess, and you should sort of like just learn to live in the mess. And I don't know, it just kind of sucked.
Which really because the movie itself, I mean, like, and like I don't really know a whole lot about it other than the cast, but the trailers look pretty funny though.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is like it seems like one of those trailers that's recut so that the jokes aren't exactly the same. But unfortunately, those jokes are exactly the same, and those are probably the funniest parts in the movie.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was just a bummer and a weird sort of thrown together movie. And what's weird about it too is it's a studio film. Like the studio made this. This is not an independent film. I just think that's kind of crazy. But anyway, so I watched that. I don't highly recommend seeing that. What I also watched this past week, other than a ton of Gilmore Girls, which is now on Netflix. So Joe, I'm expecting you to go watch a ton of Gilmore Girls.
We're doing a ton of Gilmore Girls next episode, I'm guessing.
I watched A Nightmare on Elm Street again. Well, I watched the original again, which is a favorite horror film of mine, and then I watched the remake, which I had never seen. And I'll be talking about this later this week when we do we're doing a sort of Halloween special for 13 Nights of Halloween. And let me just say, like, I love the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, it's scary and creepy, but it's also like kind of funny. And not just because it's from the 80s. Like, I think it's always been kind of funny, even to people in the 80s. Like, there's a campiness to it, but also just like a horror to it that makes it great. Joe, I don't know if you are particularly fond of the original movie.
I actually haven't seen the first one all the way through. I know back when I was in college, Brian got like a DVD set of all of them, and we started watching it, and I got pulled away to something else, so I never actually finished it. But I enjoyed what I saw of it so far.
Oh, dude, I think you might really like it. But what's kind of great about the movie is the way it's constructed. For those who don't know, the idea is that like this group of kids get haunted sort of by this scary guy, Freddy Krueger, in their dreams. And he tries to kill them in their dreams. So like the protagonist of the story, Nancy, she tries to stay awake until she can figure out how to defeat the guy. What's great about that concept is that all the horror parts, like how other horror movies like sort of fail, is their logic. Like you can't have somebody jump out of a closet that somebody just checked to see if anyone was in there. Otherwise, the audience is going to be like, well, that like. How the hell did he get there? In a movie where everything is a dream, you can do that, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, it's a dream! Like, what just happened?" If
you die in the dream, you die in real life.
Yeah, it's like what is that movie? Game Over in that way.
I was thinking about that.
What's that?
I was just thinking about that. Game Over.
It was not a great horror movie, but. I did really enjoy that movie when I watched it, but it's not a very good movie. So that's the Nightmare on Elm Street, and it had this sort of like great campiness to it. It's actually the movie that put New Line Cinemas like on the map in terms of being a production studio. So I was telling my roommate earlier when I was watching the movie, I was like, Ethan, if it weren't for this movie, we would not have Lord of the Rings.
Or Johnny Depp.
Yeah, exactly. And it was Johnny Depp's first movie, so which is like a crazy stretch, obviously, to make, but still, it's kind of cool to think about. But anyway, so this is also Wes Craven, by the way, who is like a sort of a famous director. His stuff these days kind of stinks, to be perfectly honest.
Except for Scream 4.
Oh, I actually really like Scream 4, if you're being sarcastic.
I did too. I pretty much enjoy all the Scream movies. Scream is pretty much the reason I really enjoy Wes Craven and kind of started watching some of his other stuff.
Oh man, the Scream series is one of my favorite. Although that third movie is rough, but but the right. So anyway, what the remake does is first, like, the remake was produced by Michael Bay through his company, which Platinum Dunes, which I think they did the Friday the 13th remake too, which wasn't that's actually a pretty good. It's not really a remake as much as of a reboot, and that's actually a pretty decent horror movie. But and I think they did like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboots. They have like the rights to all these different properties, and it's Michael Bay's production company, so he does whatever he wants. But what they have a tendency of doing, and what they definitely do here, is take out any of the campy fun of those old horror movies and make everything super serious and dark. It's like basically the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street is the gritty reboot of A Nightmare on Elm Street, which is weird because it's already a slasher horror film. So you don't feel like you need a gritty reboot of something that's already kind of like gross, you know?
Yeah.
So Freddy Krueger's character is like a straight up like well, I guess it's a twist. So spoiler alert for the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street is he's a straight up like child molester in the movie, and like he doesn't murder anybody in this movie, but like there's that's the whole mystery, is whether or not like the reason Freddy Krueger haunts these kids is because their parents killed him, and the reason their parents killed him is because they thought that he was this is only for the remake, by the way. They thought that he was molesting their kids. So the whole mystery is like, these kids trying to figure out whether or not like, why Freddy is haunting their dreams, and it's just kind of like super depressing and sad, and then like gross, and all the violence in it is like totally, it's like too realistic, whereas in the original one it was kind of campy and goofy. It was still gross, but it was, and still sort of like shocking, but not like this. Like this is just like disgustingly out there. So yeah. It just was a huge disappointment in terms of a remake. So anyway, that was A Nightmare on Elm Street. So I highly recommend the original to anybody who's interested in classic horror films. Joe, you should definitely check it out. You can totally not waste any time on the remake.
Well, it's interesting because it sounds like they're doing the same thing, and you can probably correct me on this, I'm sure. As you've probably seen the sequels, right, to the original one, I'm presuming.
I have. I think I've seen all the sequels to the original. Actually, the best sequel to the original is Wes Craven's New Nightmare, but
yeah,
that's a whole nother conversation. That one actually takes place in the real world, quotes, in quotation marks, where the actress who played Nancy in the original is haunted by Freddy Krueger. It's a pretty cool movie, but anyway, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, but so it sounds like they did with the Nightmare on Elm Street series what they kind of did with the Child's Play series, and that like the first one is kind of like a campy horror movie, but it works as both kind of a comedy and a slasher at the same time, and then they got goofier with each movie, and then when they kind of rebooted it in modern day with Curse of Chucky and then the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, they kind of try to make it darker and grittier and more violent again. Is that accurate, would you say?
That's accurate, but I'd say it's to a different extreme.
Right, exactly, yeah, because they are two entirely different properties that are kind of going for different audiences, but it's kind of like they're kind of doing similar things with their series.
Yeah, no, it's totally comparable, but I just think the Nightmare on Elm Street series has always sort of been this you don't watch those movies, even the originals, for good. You don't watch that for the same reason you'd watch The Conjuring, where you get solid acting, a solid plot, good character development. These movies are meant to just sort of creep you out and be fun along the way. So and then to take that and try and make something super dark, and it was like way too extreme for something that shouldn't have been that extreme. You know, it felt like Seven when it should have felt more like Tusk.
Oh gosh, that's tough.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's how I feel about that remake.
I think our goal here now, by the way, ever since we saw Tusk, is to reference it in every one of our podcasts. We just did it just now. We did it in the last one. Let's see if we keep this up.
Oh yeah, that's actually one more movie I saw, which was Gone Girl. And I wasn't here to talk about it last week, so we're gonna spend the rest of the podcast talking about Gone Girl. No.
Oh gosh, no.
But for the record, I really liked the movie. I thought it had some sort of incredible death and exploration. I know Joe didn't like it. I guess I can respect that, but I guess we're not going to talk about it too much here. If you want to listen to that, you can go back to last week's podcast and where Joe and Nick sort of talk about it. Yeah, so I guess that's pretty much it for what we've watched this week, which is going to bring us into our review of Dracula Untold. So I actually just saw this movie this morning. Joe, you saw it last night, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so I'm gonna read the sort of blurb off of IMDb here. Dracula Untold, facing threats to his kingdom and his family, Vlad Tepes makes.
That's the last name?
Apparently, I didn't even know that was in the movie.
I never heard the last name in the movie.
Makes a deal with dangerous supernatural forces whilst trying to avoid succumbing to the darkness himself. So, Joe, what did you think of Dracula Untold?
Well, first off, going into the movie, I expected one of two things. I expected it to either be terrible in the way that a lot of these modern action films are, and just that they take what could have been an interesting concept and then just make it really, really stupid and not fun. The other thing I was expecting was something closer to I, Frankenstein, where it is still really stupid but a lot of fun. On the flip side, more like a kind of like a pulpy, campy sort of thing. I was very happily surprised, though. It was neither of those. I felt like it's a simple, competently made action film. I just really, really enjoyed it. It's not stupid. It's not dumb, but it is very simple. It's very straightforward. It's not the smartest movie in the world, but it kind of moves along. You don't have to think a whole lot about what's going on. You can follow it along easily, but you don't feel like it's insulting your intelligence like a Transformers movie would or something like that. So it's just kind of like, it's kind of like it's very predictable. I knew where it was going the whole time, but I never felt like I was mad about that. It's kind of like one plot point that leads to the next, and that that this is a Dracula origin story, essentially. You know where it has to end up in the long run, and so you can kind of piece together where the plot's going. But it's just kind of a lot of fun. I was expecting something like I, Frankenstein, but I felt like what I ended up getting was a smarter, more toned down version of Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, which is also a movie that I absolutely loved.
Oh God, that movie, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, is it Hunter or Slayer?
It's a Vampire Hunter in that one.
Are you Vampire Impaler? No, I'm just kidding.
Abraham Lincoln Vlad the Impaler.
First of all, I was excited to see this movie. I was hoping for something good and interesting. It looked like Gladiator with vampires to me, which was interesting. Just that whole sort of like story arc with his family and everything.
Yeah.
It's not a bad movie. I just think it's like super forgettable. At this point, with all the other movies that we have out there that are kind of like this in terms of like their action sequences and stuff, I think it's pretty forgettable. Most of it is competently made, but some of those action sequences are really poorly made too. Like there's scenes where you can't tell what's going on, and there's what was cool was the director. I can't even remember who the director is. It was Gary Shore. He did some really interesting things camera-wise that I don't think worked, but I sort of respected the fact that he was trying them. Like that whole thing with the sword in the guy's gut.
Oh yeah. That was confusing, but it was cool.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, oh, this is kind of cool and different, but it doesn't really work because I can't really see, like for a good minute. I was like, what am I watching? I felt like I was like all of a sudden like on an acid trip because
I applaud your effort, film director, but it didn't work.
yeah, exactly. It was cool that he was trying something different, but I don't think it was a successful experiment. But the movie as a whole is just like I just think it's kind of forgettable. Like it's unfortunate to me too because there are really cool things in the movie. Like the whole idea of him, and this isn't really a spoiler, I guess, because they set it up in the first act. But the whole idea of him having to resist, you know, feeding is a cool thing and a cool theme that sort of just gets like, yeah, whatever. Like you know where it's going, but the question is how does it get there, and how it gets there ends up being kind of bland to me, which is unfortunate because I think it could have been really cool, especially thematically speaking. I think Dracula is a really cool character, and it almost felt like a missed opportunity. One of the things that did really frustrate me about the movie is the ending, which we'll talk about in spoilers. But I think I mean, it sounds like our opinions are comparable, but you're more on the positive side, and I'm leaning a little more on the negative side.
Yeah, it's funny because I think going into it, I was expecting a pretty bad movie, and I got one, and I was like, oh yeah, it's kind of fun. Whereas you were expecting something I think a lot better than what it actually was. So we probably have like similar opinions of the movie. It's just like because we went into it with different expectations, we kind of leveled out.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's kind of a good thing about like just a good idea of what the movie's like. Like no one, I wouldn't call this is a better action movie than a lot of other ones out there because I think it's smarter. So I wouldn't blame anyone for going to see it, but I also wouldn't tell anybody that they can't miss it. You know?
Yeah, exactly. I'd probably recommend. I mean, like if you're really really into Dracula, I'd probably recommend go see it in theaters. But if you just want just kind of like a fun action movie on on a weekend night, wait till it hits Netflix or Blu-ray or whatever and check it out then.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think from this point we can get into spoilers a little bit. Yeah. So from this point forward, we'll be discussing spoilers, and plot details for Dracula Untold. So you've been warned. Yeah, if you don't want it spoiled, stop listening. All right, Joe. Let's talk about that ending because
I'm confused.
okay, well, here's the thing. Like, we know, me and you know, from news at least, that Universal is trying to set up this shared universe of monsters.
Yeah, like reviving all their old monster movies.
Right, and like Dracula Untold was rumored to maybe be the first one in that series, and that's what that ending felt like to me. It was like, it was
Well,
like it was like Universal going, maybe we're gonna do this. Like we'll see how this does. Like maybe we'll do
it
it.
was an unnecessary ending to the movie. Honestly, what I was expecting to happen was that the movie was going to lead into like Jonathan Harker like going up to the castle, like like the beginning of the book or something like that. Like, oh, okay, this is where it's leading into. Then they cut ahead to modern day, and you're like, oh, I guess they're not. I guess this has nothing to do with the original Dracula.
Yeah, exactly. That was what was so frustrating to me. I guess it wasn't really that frustrating. That ending was just like, oh, like we get enough of this already. Can't this movie just like end like we know he becomes Dracula?
Yeah.
Can it just end with that? You know?
Well, the main thing I was confused about was that okay. So they set up this whole plot device of if he doesn't drink the blood, or if he doesn't drink human blood, he'll revert back to regular human after like 3 days. And if he does drink human blood, then the vampire who gave him the powers will be freed. I guess it is vampirism or whatnot.
Right.
So then they had that scene where he does. I mean, like obviously he doesn't end up drinking human blood. His wife dies. He drinks her blood. He turns into eternal vampire. And then they had this shot of kind of the old vampire kind of walks out of his cave and he's like, all right, yay, I'm free, whatever. So I thought that he just kind of became mortal again and just became a regular human being. But then you see him at the very end of the movie,
Yeah, that I did not understand that either.
and I was like, is he just immortal now, but not a vampire? Is he like modern day Van Helsing? What's going on here?
I was like, maybe he's still a vampire and lied to him. I don't know. I mean, this is like 1,000 years ago. Is it 1,000 years? I don't know. When was it?
Like that.
So 800 years ago, or 600 years ago. I can't do math right now, man.
It was just unnecessary and confusing, and the only reason they put it in there was to hint at, okay, I guess we're gonna do future movies now.
Yeah, and that was which like the ending of that movie without skipping to modern day could have hinted at that anyway. And then in the next movie they could have skipped to modern day, and I wouldn't have cared.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you think the monastery at the end was supposed to hint or supposed to sort? Maybe I was just imagining it, and I haven't seen the movie in a long time. But was it supposed to look somewhat like Bram Stoker's Dracula?
I don't know. I wasn't paying attention to that, honestly. I hadn't really thought about it.
Yeah, I don't know. There's some cool stuff in the movie. The actors did a decent job with everything.
Yeah.
That ending was stupid. Even the climactic fight scene with Dominic Cooper, I was just like, eh.
With the vampire army and everything.
Well, the vampire army I was down with that. That was cool. But the actual fight, I was just like, this is so generic.
I was getting really frustrated at that fight because he kind of walked in and the guy's like, "Oh, look, I'm surrounded by silver. We're gonna have a one-on-one fight scene." I'm like, just turn into bats and push him out of the tent already.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we don't need to be in this tent. Why are we in this tent?
He's killed like thousands of guys as a vampire at this point, and then all of a sudden he's like losing a one-on-one fight scene with Dominic Cooper.
Yeah, and it's not like, as I understood it at least, being around silver wasn't supposed to like kill him or make him weak. It was touching silver.
I just like picturing Dominic Cooper like setting up for that fight scene, like hanging like money bags from like the ceiling and everything like ahead of time, like hours ahead of time. Like, all right, guys, he's coming this way. I'm just gonna hide in here while you guys go out and do the fighting. I'm just gonna like set up this huge extravagant trap in my tent.
Yeah, that was kind of, I don't know, that was disappointing. I thought the climax where I was hoping the movie would end where his wife dies, because I thought that would make a better, like, sort of tragic climax than what they ended up going with. I actually thought that whole scene, like the whole scene where he goes and tries to find Dominic Cooper in the battle, and then like his wife is up there, and she gets pushed off the ledge or whatever, and he's trying to like that was, I was interested in that. I was really into that, and then they kept going, and I was like, I'm not as into this.
Dominic Cooper had his son, man. They had to have a showdown.
Yeah, I guess I just sort of would have been like, just let his son die.
Who cares about that kid? It's kind of like at the very end where all the vampires are like, so you got that kid there, eh?
Yeah, exactly. That was actually something, I don't know if you noticed that, but the kid goes from being on top of the building to down with Dominic Cooper in half a second.
He does. I noticed that too. Yeah.
I was like, wait, he was just what? Like.
I ran real fast.
Exactly. So that was a little interesting sort of in the film there.
Yeah. One interesting thing to me about the movie was that I actually went into this one not knowing what the rating was at all. I didn't research it or anything beforehand. So I wasn't sure if it was PG-13 or R-rated. And they actually showed a red band trailer for The Interview beforehand. So I was like, oh, I guess it's an R-rated movie, I guess. So I kind of watched the movie thinking it was an R-rated movie. I was like, oh, okay, it's kind of like a soft R, but there is some pretty bloody stuff in there. And then I looked it up online later on. Apparently it's a PG-13, which kind of surprised me a little bit, honestly.
Yeah, I did not know the rating either when I went in, and I just saw it when I looked up the blurb for it. I'm a little surprised too. I guess given the action scenes, like the big action scenes, how little blood there is, it kind of makes sense. But there are other scenes that are pretty bloody, like with all the impaling that Vlad does.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, like the impaling going on, even just like the stuff with the vampires like biting into their wrists and bleeding into a bowl. That's just kind of like, ugh.
Yeah, like sucking on each other's wrists for blood. It's an unattractive idea, no matter what.
Drinking blood out of a hollowed out skull.
Yeah, that was so gross. Like, I was like, forget the fact that you're drinking blood. You are drinking it out of a skull. Like, that is so nasty.
Who knows how long that's been sitting there?
It's like, yeah, exactly. The vampire was like, and now you die. I was like, yeah, from the bacteria. That's so gross.
There should be like a version of this movie where Vlad's like, you know what? Hold on a sec. I'll be right back. I'm gonna go back to my place and get a bowl or like a cup or something. I'll come right back and then I'll drink your blood.
Yeah. That was actually interesting. The scene where he gets his where he realizes, like, recognizes what his powers are. That scene was kind of bland to me, except for the spider. That scene was kind of bland. The spider grossed me out. I was like, oh no, stop! And then, but the rest of it, I was like, this could have been more interesting. Like, it's just him standing there, like, listening to things.
Let me tell you about everything.
But yeah, it's a decent movie. I would say it's considerably better than any of the Transformer films, for sure. I actually think it's better than like Wrath of the Titans or Clash of the Titans.
Oh yeah, it's light years better than either one of those two. Those are just kind of stupid fun. This one's it's not stupid, but it's not smart. It's in the middle. It's competent, just a general action movie.
Yeah, I still think like the whole idea in the film of him drinking the blood and then having 3 days for which like he can either succumb to it or not. Like, that's a really interesting theme given the way our society works these days with, like, just sort of we sort of have like a right now mentality where it's like we want satisfaction, we want a good feeling like instantly, whereas that idea of having to hold off, having to stifle your desires and your hunger for like an amount of time, was something that I thought could be really well done and then like they sort of, I still feel like they squandered it when his wife is just like, drink my blood, and I was like, wait a second, hold on, you want him to drink your blood and live an eternity in pain?
Hell.
Yeah, exactly. Like what happened to God will forgive you and all the stuff about God that she's so obsessed with early on. Like, that action at the end didn't ring true to me. I felt like with her character, the way it was set up, I felt like she would have rather had her husband and son with her in heaven, rather than having her husband save her son's life by becoming a demon,
Yeah, fuck that. Dominic Cooper's got their kid.
Oh yeah, dude. Okay, the Dominic Cooper's introduction too. Like, I don't think anyone at that time had that haircut. Like, that was weird. Like, I was just like looking at his character. I was like, this is bizarre. Like, I don't know. I don't know that Dominic Cooper was a great choice for that role.
Well, the characters in general, like a lot of them had kind of like that weird like braided up hair and that kind of stuff going on too. Which is funny also considering that Dominic Cooper was also in Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, because I was watching him during the movie and I'm like, what else have I seen him in recently? Like, oh wait, that other vampire action movie that came out last year.
He was in Need for Speed.
I didn't see Need for Speed though.
Did you notice there was one Turk throughout the movie who had like a very like thick Transylvanian accent, but he looked like Leonardo DiCaprio with a helmet on. Like
yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Leonardo DiCaprio from like Titanic with a helmet on, and he's glaring around the room like threateningly, and I was just like, dude, you do not look threatening. I'm sorry.
Well, one of the problems with the giving in to the blood in 3 days thing was that I too really felt they really squandered that, because I mean, other than the one scene with like the little Igor guy who's like, yes master, drink my blood, Which, by the way, at that point, the whole audience just started cracking up in my theater. I don't know about yours, but everyone just started laughing at that part. But other than that scene where he's shown to really be tempted by the blood, after that scene passes, it's just kind of like, oh yeah, I need to not drink blood for the next 3 days. Okay, and then it comes to the end of the third day, and he's like, well, I haven't drunk blood yet, so I guess I'm okay.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, it's just, I don't know. It was like it wasn't that difficult after the scene with his wife, and then that scene that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. It was an okay movie. It was entertaining. I wasn't like. There wasn't a point where I got bored. There was a point where I was like, oh man, I wish it would have ended there, but there wasn't like I wasn't really bored through any of it. There were some cool the scenes with the bats where he like controls the bats. I was like, okay, this is pretty action film-esque, but this is also pretty badass.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was I think I wouldn't blame anyone for going to see it in theaters, but I also wouldn't necessarily recommend it to a bunch of people unless you're really into Dracula, like Joe said.
Dude, I love Dracula. That's such a great book. Just read the book. Forget the movie. Read the book.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, do you have any final thoughts, Joe?
No, that's all I got. Pretty straightforward, I think.
Yeah. So I think that's gonna conclude our podcast for the week. This is a somewhat of a shorter one this week. We sort of agreed on something this time, so.
Not really have a lot to say about it.
Yeah. So if you want to check out more of our podcasts, you can find them on the-letterbox.com. You can also find it on iTunes just by searching for Outside the Letterbox. Check out our site. Next week we're starting the 13 Nights of Halloween, so we're all going to be doing different articles on some of our favorite horror films and maybe some we haven't seen before or anything. And Joe, we just had our first episode that Joe sort of, I guess, directed and cut together and published with our friend Alex Patton. That's Film Illiterates. What was it, Joe? Sorry.
Film Illiterates.
Yes, and so you can look that up on YouTube. You can also find it on our site. What was the movie you guys talked about this week, Joe?
We talked about Falling Down, Michael Douglas and Robert Duvall last week.
Nice.
And then episodes of that we're going to be releasing those every other Thursday. So this coming week, we won't have one, but then next week we're going to be talking about Repo Man. So that's what we have to do with that.
Oh man, I told you this already, but Repo Man is such a weird movie. Totally check that out. That's a pretty solid little video there. So yeah, we'll see, or at least Joe and Nick will see you guys next week.
Alrighty, take it easy.
All right.